Megan and welcome to my kitchen. Today's video is a what's for dinner video, but I wanted to pop on here real quick and say hi. I realized the other day that it's been a minute since I've appeared on camera. I've done some Q&As and popped on before, but it's been a while, so I thought it was time. Today's video, like I said, is what's for dinner, so I'll be sharing with you what meals we had this past week. Our dinners were easy to make, budget friendly, and delicious. So if you're looking for some weeknight meal ideas for your family, just keep watching. Dinner this first night was off a meal plan, but it was a cooler day and rainy, and I just wanted something comforting. And so I looked in my freezer and pantry and realized I had the things to make the Olive Garden Copycat chicken and gnocchi soup. So I'll have that recipe linked down below for you. I also wanted some kind of bread with it, and I, again, just was looking through Pinterest, seeing what I had on hand, realized I had the ingredients to make Copycat Jim and Nick's cheese biscuits. If you're not familiar with Jim and Nick's, they are a barbecue restaurant chain, and they have these little, they put them in mini muffin tins, little cheese biscuits that are a little bit sweet, so good. I will also have that recipe linked down below for you. So first up, we're going to add some Biscuit mix into a bowl. I'm adding in some buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, no worries, just use regular milk and a little lemon juice or vinegar. We're going to add in a little bit of sugar, and then this might seem a little odd, but we're going to add in just a tiny little splash of vanilla, not enough to where you can kind of pick the vanilla out, but it just gives a little sweetness. I'm going to add in some shredded cheddar cheese, and then I felt like it needed another splash of buttermilk, so I added that, and then I let this sit for about 3 or 4 minutes just out on the counter. Now, I forgot to mention this, but the oven is preheating to 425 degrees. I'm going to scoop the muffin mix into a greased mini muffin little container, and then I'm going to pop this into the preheated oven and bake these for about 12 to 15 minutes until they're cooked all the way through and golden brown. Now, mine, I overcooked them. What I did was I looked in the oven. I wanted them to cook like another minute and get brown, and I told myself to set the timer, and I didn't. And so they baked for like another 5 minutes or so until I remember, but nonetheless, they were still delicious. For the soup, I have shared this before on my channel. It's been a little bit though, but I wanted to share it again because this soup is delicious. It's perfect for the upcoming cooler weather, and it is so much cheaper, y'all, than going to Olive Garden. And in my opinion, I honestly like the homemade soup better. So in this pot here, I've got some butter. I melted it. I'm going to add in some diced onion and carrot. Season that with some salt and pepper. I'm going to cook that on about medium heat for about 5 minutes until those veggies are tender. The recipe calls for celery, and Olive Garden uses it, but if you've been with me for a while, you know I am not a celery lover. I don't keep it on hand, and I didn't have it on hand, so skipped it. Now, once those veggies are tender, I'm going to add in some minced garlic, give that a stir, cook that for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to add in our flour. We're going to give that flour a really good stir and then allow that to cook for about 2 minutes. That helps take the raw taste out of the flour. Now that we've let that flour cook out, we're going to add in some half and half. You could use just regular milk. You could use milk and cream, which is what half and half is, whatever your preference is, whatever you've got on hand or what you can find on sale. So we're going to slowly whisk that half and half in, and then we're going to add in some chicken broth. I'm using water and chicken bouillon powder. Again, you want to add that in slowly and whisk it constantly. Now for the seasonings, we're going to add in some smoked paprika, and then the recipe called for thyme. I actually had some fresh on hand, and it was getting kind of questionable, so I was excited that I had it and I could use, at least some of it before it went bad. So I'm going to give that a whisk, and then we're going to allow that to cook for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes or so until it gets thickened. Now, you can add like rotisserie chicken into this. You can add in raw chicken and allow it to simmer in the soup for about 20 minutes until it's cooked all the way through. I took some chicken tenders, seasoned them up with some of the Kinders, just their blend seasoning, just basically salt, pepper, garlic. I cooked these in the air fryer and then shredded them up with a couple forks. So I'm just stirring that chicken into the soup. Quick reminder, if you do decide to use raw chicken, you want to make sure that you cook it until it's at least 165 degrees internal temperature. So I added my chicken into the soup. I gave it a stir, and I cooked it for about 5 minutes just to warm the chicken through. Now I'm going to add in my gnocchi. You do want to try to break the pieces apart, and you can really find this at most grocery stores. I got this at Aldi. I found it at Walmart, Kroger. I even find it at my local Dollar Tree. You just want to cook the gnocchi to the package instructions, and once it is tender, I decided to season it up with a little salt and pepper to taste. I'm going to add in some crushed red pepper flakes. I don't feel like this makes this spicy at all. I didn't add very much. If you're sensitive to spice, you can leave it out. If you like spice, you of course can add a little more. Next, I'm going to add in some chopped baby spinach. I just gave it a really rough chop. And at this point, I mean, the soup's done. All we really need to do is just wilt that spinach. So after we add it, we're going to give it a stir and then just allow it to cook for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. And yeah, once it's wilted, it is ready to go. And I like my gnocchi soup a little on the thicker side, more like what Rachel Ray calls a stew in a soup. If you want it thinner, of course, you can add more half and half or chicken broth. Now, for the salad, if you saw last week's What's for Dinner video, you'll see I made a pepper jelly vinaigrette, and I had leftover vinaigrette and all the salad ingredients, so I just put that back together. Just a quick reminder, it was arugula, some crumbled goat cheese, you know, that package of salad toppings that has like the craisins and the honey roasted pecans, and then I did that vinaigrette, and it was such a delicious salad. All right, here are the plates. So we've got some of the soup, the little mini cheese biscuits, and that salad. This was delicious. That soup, like I said, is so comforting. It's so yummy, and the bread with the soup was really good, and the salad just delicious. So for dinner the next night, it was actually our Sunday dinner, and there is a lady on Instagram. I don't know how to pronounce her Instagram name. I think it's Autism Mom, like autism. She has an adult son who is autistic, and she does a lot of awareness for autism. She is so sweet. And she sent me a message on Instagram. I don't know, it's been maybe a month or so ago. I'd made ham, and she asked if I had tried, I think I made ham. I can't remember now. Anyway, she asked if I had tried ham with like a honey orange glaze. And I was like, no, I haven't, but that sounds delicious. So I went on Pinterest and looked up some recipes. I'll have the recipe linked in the description box below for you that I decided to use. But when I looked in my pantry, I didn't have orange marmalade, which is what the recipe called for. I had tangerine marmalade. But I have this on hand. I'm not fixing to go to the store just to buy some orange marmalade when I've got tangerine in the pantry. So that's what we're going to roll with. We're going to make this quick little glaze for the ham. So I've got that marmalade in a little saucepan. I am going to add in some minced garlic. You can, of course, mince your own. I'm using the stuff in the jar. We're going to add in some Dijon mustard. Next, I'm going to add in the honey. And then I did happen to have an orange on hand. I was supposed to zest the orange. I forgot, but there's a lot of zest in the marmalade, so I, didn't worry about it. Now for the seasonings, we're going to add in a little bit of cinnamon and cloves. Now this is completely personal preference here, and I may be in the minority, but I'm not a huge fan of cloves, especially with ham. And I don't know why. Growing up, I used to like it that way. Like that's how my dad, I remember him making it for the holidays was, take whole cloves, put them in the ham, and, the little pattern. But yeah, just totally personal preference. Next time I would make this, I think I'd leave the cloves out, but I mean, it was still delicious. It's just totally personal preference. Now, the recipe didn't call for this, but I'm going to add in just a tiny little pinch of salt just to enhance the flavors. We're going to give that a good whisk, bring this to a simmer over about medium heat, and simmer it for about 10 minutes, and you do want to stir it often. Now for the ham. This is just for Gary and I don't need a ton of leftover ham, so this is what I'm using. I found this on sale at Food Line. It's just like a little 2.5 pound ham. The recipe was for an 8 to 10 pound ham, so I quartered the recipe. Now, in this baking dish here, I've added a little bit of water, and I just took the other half of that orange that I didn't juice and just cut it up and put it in the pan. Now, I'm using a disposable pan. If you are using like a regular baking dish, highly recommend you line it with foil. We're going to glaze the ham, and this ham is already cooked, so I'm not worried about cross-contamination as far as brushing the glaze on there. If you're using an uncooked ham, you of course, don't want to put your brush on raw ham and then in the glaze and back and forth. So cover this tightly with foil. Now, the recipe said to bake this at 325 degrees for an hour and then bake it for another 30 minutes. But because this ham was so much smaller than what the recipe called for, I looked at the package instructions and it said to only bake it for 20 to 30 minutes. So I would say just go by the package instructions, just make sure your ham is cooked thoroughly. Now, the last maybe 5 or 10 minutes or so, I did pull the ham out and give it another little glaze. And yeah, that is what the ham looked like when it was done. I had this can of yams in my pantry that I needed to use up. I drained the syrup off, or most of it anyway. I'm going to add it to another little foil lining. And if you don't want to use disposable pans, don't use them. But I'm in my kitchen. I'm going to do me. And on Sunday, I try not to do a ton of dishes if I can avoid it. So yeah, that's what I'm choosing to do. If you don't want to use them, of course, you don't have to. Now I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over these yams, followed by some ground cinnamon and nutmeg. Oh, and I did not follow a recipe for this at all. I just kind of threw this together. Next, I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of brown sugar. You can add as much or as little brown sugar as you want. You could also do honey or a sugar substitute, maple syrup. Next, I'm going to take some little pats of butter, and I kind of broke those into little pieces. I laid a few on there, and then I'm going to pop this into the oven alongside the ham, and I baked these for probably about 30 minutes or so. You could add some like roasted pecans or chopped pecans on top. I wanted to do that. Unfortunately, I didn't have any on hand, or you could also add some marshmallows the last couple minutes and broil those. Next up, I'm going to make my broccoli casserole. I have made this for years and years and years. I got the recipe from a coworker forever ago, and it's one of our family favorites. In this pot here, I'm going to add in a can of cream of mushroom soup. If you or your family don't like cream of mushroom, use whatever cream of blank soup you like. And if you don't want to use the canned stuff, I do have a video where I shared how you can make it homemade, and it is so easy, just a few ingredients. So I'll link that video down below for you. Next, we're going to add in some Velveeta, and if you don't want to use processed cheese, I guess you could shred up some just regular shredded cheese. I've never tried it before, but I'm sure it would work. If you don't want to use Velveeta, but you're not opposed to processed cheese, you can also use like Cheez Whiz. That works here as well. Now we're going to add in a little bit of garlic powder. Now the recipe years ago that I got from my friend, instead of Velveeta, it called for the little tubes of I can't remember the name, but it was like a Kraft garlic cheese. They don't make it anymore. I wish they did. It was delicious. But best I can do is Velveeta and garlic powder. So we are going to cook that on like medium-low heat, stirring it often until the Velveeta has melted completely. You do want to keep an eye on this, and you don't want it to scorch. Now, I had just a tiny little bit of shredded cheddar cheese in my fridge that needed to be used up, so I just tossed it into the sauce. I like to add in a little bit of pepper. I don't feel like it needs any salt, but you can taste it and add it if you want. Now I'm going to add in my broccoli. I prefer to use frozen broccoli. I don't cook it ahead of time. It's already steamed before it's frozen, and you're cooking it in the oven, so it gets cooked. But I'm going to give that a mix and then place that into a greased casserole dish. This is a 9x9. You can double this recipe, and it makes a 9x13. I'm going to spread the casserole out and then cover it with some melted butter mixed with crushed up crackers. And then this is going to go into the preheated oven. Again, it was set at 350 degrees and bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. I mean, everything's cooked. You're just wanting everything to come together and get really good and bubbly, and then those crackers on top get golden brown. And at the very last minute, I have no clue why, but just corn sounded good. So I just opened up a can of corn, drained it, added it to a bowl, little pat of butter, some Lowry seasoned salt, and I just popped it in the microwave for like 3 or 4 minutes. Now in the fridge, I also had one of the small cans of crescent rolls, that only have like 4 in there. Instead of unrolling the dough and, rolling out the triangles and then rolling them up, I just sliced the dough whole. So it was little rounds, and I just baked them according to the package instructions. All right, here are the plates. So we've got some of the ham, those yams. Y'all, I just cracked myself up. I remember that meme where that lady, I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, where she's like hams, yams, potatoes, tomatoes. I just cracked myself up. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm a nut, y'all. All right, here are the plates. So we've got those hams, the yams, the broccoli casserole, the rolls, the corn. This was delicious. Thank you so much for recommending the orange honey ham combo. It was delicious. And y'all, this is perfect for the upcoming holidays. The orange with the cloves and the cinnamon, it just screamed holidays. This was delicious. So good. All right, so for dinner the next night, Gary had left to go out of town. He just went on a quick little business trip to Atlanta. I decided to make myself some smothered green beans. So in this pot here, this is on about medium-high heat. Added a little bit of oil. I have these turkey smoked sausages. They've been in my fridge. I got them on sale at Kroger a while back. I really needed to use them up. So I just sliced them, and then I'm just going to brown them in this pot and remove them and, just kind of set them to a side and proceed with making the green beans. So I'm going to add in a little pat of butter to that. And y'all, I had a lot going on. Like Gary had just gotten into his hotel room, and he was calling me, and the dogs needed to go outside. It was just a lot going on. So I had this pot up too high. The butter burnt, but it is what it is. I decided to just roll with it. So I added in some diced onions, gave that a stir. Now, I loosely followed a recipe, loosely meaning I used the ingredients the recipe called for, but not the measurements. I just eyeballed the measurements. You can use whatever seasonings you want. I added in some smoked paprika, garlic powder, and then some Slap Ya Mama. I'm going to give that a stir, and I cooked that for about 5 minutes or so until those onions were tender. But like I said, I had my pot up way too hot, and so I did add in a little splash of chicken broth just so, you know, cool down the pan a little bit, make sure I didn't burn the onions. Now, once they were tender, I decided to add in some minced garlic from the jar. You can, of course, mince up your own garlic. Gave that a stir, cooked that for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to add in some flour. Now, you can skip this part. This makes it more, well, it's smothered green beans, so it makes it more like a sauce or gravy around the green beans, but you can skip it if you want. So I cooked the flour for a couple minutes, and then I added in some chicken broth. I had this bone broth, so that's what I'm going to use. Now, for the potatoes, I had about a half a bag of these little baby potatoes. These really, really needed to be used. So I just kind of cut them either in half or quartered them, depending on how big they were. Now for the green beans, I've got these fresh green beans I decided to cut them up. I halved some of them, cut some of them into thirds. That was just personal preference. But basically, I'm going to add the potatoes and green beans, sorry. Give that a stir, and then you want to cover it, bring it to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and you want to cook it for about 30 minutes or so until your potatoes are tender and your green beans are tender. Now, I like my green beans super, super tender, like falling apart, so I cooked them a little bit longer, but just cook them to your preference. Now, when they were done to my liking, I added the sausage back in, stirred it, and then I did cook it for about maybe 3 to 5 minutes or so just to warm that sausage back through. Taste it, adjust the seasonings to your taste. Next up, I had a box of Jiffy Mix that needed to be used up. I know I've been saying that a lot, but I told you all, I think in my grocery haul video, if you caught that I was trying to cook a lot from my freezer, fridge, and pantry. So that's what I was trying to do. I just cooked the Jiffy Mix up according to the package instructions. And yeah, here was my plate. Had some of the green beans with the sausage and the potatoes and the Jiffy muffin with a little bit of butter. Delicious. Real quick, I'm going to move away from the dinners and do a little puppy break. So I've had several people comment over the past couple months and say, hey, you talk about your dogs. We want to see them. And I have shared them before, but it has been a while. I have a couple videos where I share like how I make their food and a couple treats. I will try to remember to link those in the description box below for you. So first up, this is Mr. Happy. We have had him since 2018. I believe he's 8 years old. He's a Yorkie Shih Tzu mix. He has a cute, adorable little underbite, but don't let his little grumpy old man appearance fool you. He is so sweet. And then this is Mr. Pepper. He is a Chihuahua Cairn Terrier mix. He is 5 years old. Quick little story, if you're new to my channel, about Pepper. So my grandpa passed away last year. He was 90 years old, and Pepper was his baby. And what's funny to all of us that know him about that is growing up, dogs did not belong in the house. They belonged outside, and dogs had a job because he was a farmer. He was a dairy farmer. And so, you know, once he fell in love with little Pepper, we just thought, you know, that was just adorable. This, you know, big tough farmer, fell in love with this little 6-pound Chihuahua mix, but they are both so sweet. We love them so much. So yeah, just if you wanted to see them, there they are. All right, now back to dinner. So Gary flew back home this night. He got home kind of late, around like 9 o'clock, and I was kind of waiting to make dinner, you know, closer to when he got there. So I just went through the freezer and fridge again, trying to cook with what I got on hand. I found this Trader Joe's Mandarin orange chicken, the Trader Joe's fried rice, and then this box of egg rolls. Don't remember which grocery store I got it from, but I decided we would cook this. I just cooked the Trader Joe's orange chicken in the air fryer, cooked the rice in the microwave according to the package instructions, cooked the egg rolls in the air fryer, and yeah, that was dinner this night. Dinner the next night, I don't even remember now what was on the meal plan, whatever it was, didn't feel like cooking, so we did a yo-yo night, or you're on your own. Some people call this fend for yourself. I decided I wanted a tuna fish sandwich, so here's what I used to make my tuna fish. I've got some canned tuna, mayonnaise, mustard, and sweet relish. I prefer to use the sweet. If you want to use dill, of course use dill. You can also just chop up some pickles. So I drained 2 cans of the tuna really well and, you know, just kind of flaked it with my fork. I'm going to add in a little bit of mayonnaise, a little squirt of mustard, some relish, and I don't follow a recipe for this. I just eyeball everything, and plus it also depends on like how much I'm making. Now we being my family, my granny did this, my mom did this. We like to add hard-boiled eggs to our tuna salad. And a quick tip for these little egg slicers, if you put the egg like horizontally and then slice it, pick it up, and then rotate it and do it vertically, it kind of chops your hard-boiled eggs up for you. So quick little tip there, you don't have to get out a cutting board and knife. So yeah, like I said, just eyeballed it, mixed everything up, added a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, and then I just had that on some white bread with some just, I think they were like Walmart brand Ruffles chips. And then for Gary, for lunch that day, we went to Longhorn for just kind of like a quick little lunch date. He had their cheeseburger with loaded fries, and as you can see, he had like almost all of his fries and half his cheeseburger left over, so he just warmed that up and ate that for dinner that night. Now, this next dinner wasn't actually on the dinner meal plan. I was going to make it one morning for Gary for breakfast, but I had several people reach out to me here on YouTube and over on Instagram, which if you're not following me on Instagram, by the way, go and follow me. It's just Megan's Kitchen, but remember my first name is spelled kind of weird, but I share more of like my day-to-day life over there. But yeah, I had several of you reach out and are like, oh my gosh, can you share this recipe? So I decided to do it for dinner. That way I could share it with y'all. And we're going to do Copycat Waffle House Texas cheesesteak melts. Gary loves him some Waffle House, and this is what he prefers to get every time he goes. He loves it. I didn't follow a recipe. I just looked at the description on the menu of this and just kind of threw something together. So here's how I made it. I've got this big skillet. This is over about medium heat. It has a little bit of oil and butter in it. I'm going to add in some diced onions, season it up with a little salt, and cook this for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes until they're really good and tender. Now, I'm going to cook hash browns in this skillet, so I'm going to take those onions out, but I needed the onions for the hash browns and the Texas cheesesteak melt, so I just cooked it in this pan, and yeah, that way less dishes. So once I've set those diced onions to the side in this same skillet, I'm going to add in a little bit of oil and butter, and then I'm using these simply shredded hash brown potatoes. These are fresh. You can use the frozen ones if you want, and I'm just following the package instructions on this. So I added the hash browns, spread them out, and then cooked them over like medium high heat for about 5 minutes, gave them a flip, cooked them another maybe 5 minutes or so. At this point, I'm going to add the onions back in, and Gary likes his hash browns when he goes to Waffle House pretty much all the way, except he doesn't add the chili and I think maybe the jalapenos. So I'm just making it the way he likes his hash browns. So I cooked the hash browns until they were crispy to our liking. I set out some of them for me because that's how I like them, just the hash browns and the onions. Here I've got some cubed ham that I had in my fridge, and then I had some canned mushrooms I drained, and I just browned them up in the skillet really quickly. I'm going to add that to the hash browns. I'm adding in some chopped tomatoes. I'm going to give that a stir. I cooked that for another couple minutes or so. And then I apologize, I forgot to film this. But you can kind of see it there on the back burner. I added some sliced American cheese, covered it with a lid, and then just set it on the back burner. The heat's not on, just to allow that cheese to melt. So in this skillet here, I am cooking these like cheesesteak meat. I just cooked it according to the package instructions. This was on like medium high heat. Added in the steaks, broke them up, and then there is a lot of fat juices, whatever you want to call it, on this. They're very greasy, and so I like to drain as much of that fat, grease, whatever it is, off with some paper towels. That's just a personal preference. Now, once the steak is cooked almost all the way through, I'm going to add in those sauteed onions from before, and then I decided to season this up with some of the Kinder steak seasoning. Use whatever seasonings you like. I added in a tiny little bit of salt. I had tasted the meat before I seasoned it, by the way. Make sure you do that. You know, you don't know how much sodium is in your steak, so I gave it a taste before I seasoned it. So I am going to separate my piles of meat, and then I added some sliced white American cheese on top. Same thing, just covered it with a lid, pushed it to the side to allow that cheese to melt. All right, now here are the plates for Gary's cheesesteak melt. I took some Texas toast, buttered it, toasted it, and then added the cheesesteak mixture to that. And then I've got his hash browns. And then for me, I have my hash browns, again, just the hash browns and onions. And for my sandwich, I had one of the Lewis steak rolls that needed to be used up. So I just buttered and toasted that and then added the cheesesteak mixture to mine. And yeah, this was delicious. Like I said, Gary loves this sandwich. It's his favorite, and he really, really enjoyed this. So if you like this sandwich, if you like Waffle House, give it a try. All right, that is it for today's What's for Dinner video. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already. It really does help my channel. And please like this video if you did enjoy it. Leave me a comment down below. I hope that you got some dinner ideas from this. And again, thank you for watching. I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.